Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Your Spiritual Journey. This is Dr. Bob, and this is the space and the place where we talk about things important to your soul. And this is actually our first episode of season 9. So we're kicking off a new season here. And we hope that if you're watching on YouTube, that you'll like us, that you'll subscribe. All of that helps keep us on the air. So just think about this. What if art could heal, inspire, and connect us to something greater? It's not just a vision for Ann Heitzel, it's her life's work. She's a visionary artist and death doula whose work bridges creativity, healing, and life's most profound transitions. She's the creator of MetaArt, and she pioneered a transformative art genre designed to evoke peace, love, and profound healing and evolution. At an early age, Ann could assist those crossing over, creating a safe and loving space for the death experience to unfold. She's fostered this natural esoteric ability for decades, working from the side of spirit to support both loved ones and strangers who ask for assistance. And I'm not going to go on with any more of this introduction because we're going to let Ann tell her story, and then we'll get into all of the many things that she's done, experienced, and is able to offer us. So, Ann, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about your spiritual journey.
Oh, thank you, Bob. And thank you so much for having me on today. For those of you that are on the YouTube channel, behind me is some meta art. So as you're watching, Bob and I have our conversation, just take the art in, whatever you're drawn to. Just really don't focus on me, focus on the art and have that experience. So yeah, Bob, that's a big doorway to open, right? A spiritual journey. And so I've really been thinking about this because I've had a lot of conversations about kind of like the logistics, like the chronological order of what happened in my life, which is what you're asking for, right? A journey. But I'd like to view it from the perspective of kind of like get some groundwork, right? To look at it from the perspective of human evolution, of human potential, of consciousness. And oftentimes I feel like there's a kind of a delineation when we use the word spiritual, right? A lot of people go to spiritual, religious, there's kind of a gray area there. And so I always look at it, I've looked at my life very, very religious in my early years. Everything I do is through Christ consciousness, my alignment with Christ consciousness. So my religion brought me into this higher awareness of Christ consciousness, which I feel is very evolutionary, right? Um, and everything that we all have a cool story. We all have a cool story of how we've evolved as a human being, especially those people that know they've come here to evolve and to raise the consciousness, right, of the planet. And it's great to hear those stories, but I speak of mine really honoring and giving space and energy and devotion to everybody's spiritual journey, everybody's conscious evolution. And this just happens to be how it happened for me, right? And so I hope that my story is supportive or inspirational, or, allows a person to go, oh, she could do that. I could do that kind of thing, right? Because it is all surrounding three things: surrender, trust, and love. And that's how I've experienced my life and my evolution. So yeah, my bio says that, I'm a death doula, which was very much my start in on my journey. Really at a very, very young age, just, a profound thinker, a deep thinker for like a 7-year old, an 8-year old, right? Always um, kind of pondering the complexity of life and why we're here and all of that. Now, as an adult, I look back and go, well, that's kind of extraordinary for a child, right? And lived through some years of, getting married, raising children, where like that life's busyness kind of was a part of it, right? But in my 30s, what oftentimes happens is there's some form of tragedy, there's some form of dramatic thing that happens in a person's life. And for me, that kind of put me back on that track of why am I here? What does life mean? I've always had this innate belief, again, even as a child, that that Jesus was our teacher, that he came to teach us that you can do this and more. And that was what I was always felt aligned with. And so had something traumatic happen, and it kind of put me back on that path. And I started reading, you know, books on spirituality, A Course in Miracles, or um, Neil Donald Walsh's books, Conversations with God, and and internalizing that, right? And seeing what that meant for me. And I've always had a bit of an adventurous spirit. And so with very, very close friends, soul sisters, really began kind of saying yes to everything that came to life. And so I I worked under a guru for a number of years, and went on retreats all over, and sat in silence and meditated and did all the things, right? And what naturally and organically evolved was this capacity to support people that were going through either through the dying process, or had died but not fully crossed over. And Bob, this was not an arena that I chose. I wouldn't have chosen it. It was kind of something that has taken me kind of a while to come out of the closet with, because I was a single mom. I didn't want my kids to be known for the kids with the mom that talks to dead people, right? It was
Right.
it was like all these connotations, realizing now later in life that it wasn't really, yes, it was definitely them. It's hard enough growing up and, being in middle school. We had just moved. Um, I wanted them to be accepted, but I also wanted to be accepted as well. And so, that has kind of evolved as well, which is why I'm able to sit here and have a conversation with you about it. But so it was this, just, again, surrender, trust, doing everything that I'm doing in love, and was finding that yes, I could usher someone from this dimension into the next. And there's always, so okay, so it started out was people that had already died. So many people would reach out to me and say, my brother-in-law or whoever committed suicide. Can you make sure he's okay? That was really, a big part of what I did. And then it moved into supporting those that are actively dying. But in all cases, my only role, the main role, and again, I'm working with Christ consciousness, is what do you require? So my work is safe passage. And it really is the greatest way that I can serve. And there's lots of fascinating stories around that. And that does kind of pique a lot of people's interests. But for me, it's only part of the story. So I also owned a marketing firm for many, many years. And I I made the realization that, well, if I'm able to engage with a dimension of a person that is no longer in human form or moving out of human form, physicality, that I can do that for living people. I can do that for my marketing business owners. And so I can go into their highest potentials of their higher self to create marketing materials, branding, websites, whatever that carries the essence of that individual or that company so that energetically it's like a higher form of promotion because it's happening energetically. And for years I only did this for companies that had a great purpose to be here to serve humanity, that were very grounded in what their method was. So it wasn't clients that were just looking to increase the bottom line or you know
Well,
so
were these mainly nonprofits?
they were not. They were individuals and companies that are just here to do good. So I would put them more under the category, whether they were officially or not, a B Corp. So they had their very high mission and vision, for how they wanted to serve. And so um so I started doing this process called Meta Insights, where I have a conversation with that person's higher self, just like I would have a conversation with the person that's actively dying. And I would record it. I record it. It's in an audio, it's in a PDF you can read. It's a very casual conversation with a person's higher self. And and so I knew that there was something kind of more to that service, and had kind of one of those very spiritual experiences where I was shown my life and then shown it again, that each aspect of my life was freedom, I was able to live in a different freedom that I had not been able to before. Again, I was a single mom. I had been married, I had owned a home, kind of a lot of things that anchor us. And I was shown that no, I'm in this place that there's freedom. Well, what does that mean? And what the answer was get rid of everything you own, get on the road, go to your marketing clients, but see what there is to see what there is to what expansion there is. And so again, that surrender, trust, do it in love. I got on the road, and my first stop, the dear, dear loved one of mine now said, that place you go on my behalf, that you garner the information, right, of how best to put my essence into marketing. I'd like you to take me there. And so that became retreats where we do this together in a process that would be a whole nother conversation. But it's there that I immediately understood there needs to be something in this reality, in this dimension, that doesn't represent that higher vibration, that highest vibration. It is that highest vibration in this reality, right? To kind of tether it in, to strengthen it. And that aligned with all of my beliefs. It's a support system for the individual to reach their higher self in a new way, in a visual way, through a painting. So these paintings began with those clients in these retreats. And I would leave the painting with them, that they would gaze at the painting, contemplate, open their mind, meditate with the painting, and it would take them back into these spaces that we were accessing during our retreat. So the paintings have always been a meditation tool. a contemplation tool. And that's an ancient Sanskrit practice of gazing. That's a very practical, kind of accepted method to really go into those inner deep spaces. And so, and add on to that too, that it's a painting, right? Totally accepted in society. People have abstract paintings all the time, right? So they're things that we know and accept. And however, it is literally that essence. I always say these are paintings masquerading, or I'm sorry, it's a frequency masquerading as a painting. So you want more, you want to engage more within yourself with love. Then there's a meta art painting that is love. It's resonating love. And just having it hang in your office or living room or meditation room, it's ushering in that frequency, and it's engaging with you. But then you can also sit and contemplate with it, meditate with it, gaze at it. So this opened up a whole new world for me in 2020, when I was not doing these paintings and leaving them with marketing clients. I was creating them guided. I'm like instructed. The first one was the frequency of peace. So I paint this painting, and now I finally have a painting to kind of sit with and meditate with. And again, these big doors open, this understanding that these frequencies, so the frequency of peace going into the retina just by looking at it, to the hypothalamus, directly to the pineal gland. So these paintings, which some have sound, I'll mention more in a bit, bypass the intellect and engage with the pineal gland, the seat of the soul, our connection to the divine. So they are support, just like you might own a crystal and hold a crystal in your hand, or wear a cross, or whatever these support elements that, and we have as humans. That's what these paintings are. And what I love about that is it isn't this, well, look outside yourself, the answers are over here in this teaching or this person, which wonderful, right, for us to get guidance from wherever in life. But these really do engage us deeper within our own divinity, within our own connection to the divine. And so now the marketing thing is kind of over there, and I'm just fully into creating these paintings, which I do for individuals, commission pieces. I do paintings of a person's what I call fully realized divine self. I say those words instead of higher self because to me it's a dimension that is with fully realized divine earth, right? There's this dimension that everything and everyone is fully enlightened. So again, and then I do pieces for an individual frequency like this. There's actually 3 doors here. I paint on physical doors, which are thresholds. This one in the middle is grace. So this is the frequency of grace. And this one right here is the frequency to heal. And I think I'll stop there and see if you have any questions. I've been talking for quite a bit.
Well, only about 100, but I'll, I'll try to keep that number down. First of all, I'm very interested, and I think my audience would be interested in the first experience. So, meaning, okay, what was your first experience that made you realize that you could assist somebody in crossing over? What was that like? How did that happen?
It's interesting because I had mentioned I was working with under a Brazilian guru, And he would come to the United States, and as he was seeing his clients, he would just, there was myself and two other dear soul sisters, and he would just invite one of us in and just go over in the corner. Of course, the person gave their permission, and then we would have our experience and share it with the, with his client. And I loved that experience because it was just this allowing my gifts to just come through, right? I wasn't being taught a certain way to do something or to do one thing or the other. I was just invited into a very highly kind of energized or energetic space, and a very holy space, because the energy there was, for healing and engaging with the divine. So the most dramatic moment was me being guided to stand up and walk over to this gentleman's, he was laying, on a table, to his feet. And I put my hands underneath the bottoms of his feet a few inches away. And I don't really remember the exact thing that was happening, but it was very big. And I remember opening my eyes and looking down, and this is going to sound crazy, but my hands were not mine, they were a man's, and I was wearing a white robe. And I knew at that point that was my perception of Christ consciousness embodying me to support this man. And so then the information started coming through of what was mine to do, that I could help these souls, support and assist these souls that at the time were not fully crossed over. And then, like I said, it evolved into those in the active state of dying.
Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to picture that event and just what it would mean. I mean, so at the end of that particular event, and you're no longer in the robe, and that feeling of Christ consciousness, what kind of emotion and feeling did you have? And maybe it's not fair to ask since it was a while ago, but
Yeah.
can you speak to, I guess, what that meant to you internally, emotionally, and spiritually?
Yeah, I've never been asked that, Bob, and it really does bring back that memory. I I think best describe it as really understanding this relationship, right? That Christ is my brother. That he's a very, it was at that point that I really started a very deep relationship with Christ. And again, even from my childhood, I remember leaving church. We went every Sunday. I was very religious. I baptized my dog at like 9 years old, um, thinking, I don't know, there's more to that. There's more to that, right? I just always felt like I'm not being told everything. And and it began this very, very active relationship with Christ. I spent a year every night studying A Course in Miracles. Like any readings or guidance that came in front of me, I was eating it up, passionately, and really discerning what's making me alive, what's really aligning with me, and making that a priority in my journey.
So, at what age were you going through A Course in Miracles, and were you doing that on your own or with a group?
That would have probably been in my early 40s, and that was many moons ago. And so I'd been on this path already for decades, but that, yeah, probably my early 40s. And I took a year and worked through it on my own, because what I was understanding for myself was, I it's always been this inner journey, right? Me and me and then me and then me and then me,
Mhm.
more and more and deeper and deeper. And so yes, it was very much that. And then it was after that year, I really fun story said to life, okay, that was great. That was huge. That was like, whew. But I always felt like if I read 3 paragraphs, which was pretty much all I could really get through sometimes, right? Because it's a
Sure,
very dense,
sure.
profound reading. Maybe I grasped 10% or 20%, trusting that my higher intelligence was grasping it all. But I thought, okay, now I would like to go through it in a group and just kind of, I'm ready to find a group. And I hadn't, I'd moved back home and I hadn't, I'm raising kids. They're teenagers now, very, very, very busy life, working full time. Didn't really have a, my spiritual kind of circle of friends in that new location. And very soon, it might have even been that night, I met a mutual friend of ours, Cheryl, at an event, a public event, and we had lunch the next day. And within the first, oh gosh, 2 minutes of our conversation, A Course in Miracles came up. And she said, "Oh, well, I go to a group every Sunday night with Vince Lisi, another mutual friend of ours." So I started going, to those more like class experiences.
Yeah, my experience was that A Course in Miracles sat on my bookshelf for 2 years before I opened it. And uh, what I did was I took it with us. My wife and I went to Rwanda for 7 months, and
Mm,
no television, no radio, uh, and it gets dark at 6 p.m. every day. Uh, so we took the Course in Miracles and read it back and forth to each other, paragraph by paragraph. And then when we returned, I joined a group uh, and found that the group work was really beneficial. And then when
yeah.
that group dissolved, I joined the Vince Lisi group, as you did. And I'm still part of that group. We still meet weekly and go through it. Sometimes we only get through one paragraph at a meeting, so
Right.
uh, you know what Vince is like. And uh, Vince has been on this podcast. Well, probably a year and a half ago. It's been a while. But anyway, I understand the process you went through and trying to do it on your own and then deciding, okay, now it's time for a group. That makes a
Right.
lot of sense. Okay, since we've spent a lot of time on your artwork, I want to ask you a couple questions about it. One is that you have some of your work on display at Lilydale, or at least your website. You know, when that was posted, you were displaying at a coffee shop in Lilydale. Uh, Talk to me a little bit about your relationship to Lilydale and how that started, and what, if anything, you've done up there.
Yeah, that's interesting. First, before I tell that, I want to kind of explain that the paintings kind of fall into 3 categories. What I'm finding the longer that I do them, there's the category like grace or heal, which is a frequency that a person can work with and it can support all their energy bodies. Wonderful. Then there's the level, this one here was done for the IONS organization, the International Association of Near Death, Research, and so this is an example of more of a alchemical tool. So this is the title of this one is called Crossing the Veil, and so it's for those that have had an NDE and supports them in whatever way they need support, or for the individual that's interested in conversing with the other side of the veil. And so that's more of a very specific alchemical tool. Again, I do those for the individual, to do their highest work, but that's an example of that. Then there's the piece that I did at Lilydale, which is my first piece. I heard for years and years that these paintings, and how I do them, has the capacity to heal a geographic location. And, before I mentioned to you that I'm tapping into a person's fully realized self that resides on fully realized divine earth. So the concept is going to a geographic location and that and bringing down that geographic location of fully realized divine earth, or what some people would call the new earth, right? This evolutionary higher dimension, into that geographic location, therefore healing it or balancing it or elevating it, right? And so I knew for years that was a thing. Again, not on a vision board, right? Just like my instructions. And so, oh gosh, now it's been about 2 years or so. I got connected to one of the mediums that is kind of high up at Lilydale. And after we had a conversation, much like this one, she said, "Leanne, we need you. We really could use, some support at Lilydale." And so I went there for 3 days. Again, it's this constant just following, surrender, trust, and love. Went there for 3 days and just felt the energy and understood that if everything played out, that I was a willing participant to channel a painting that could support and elevate the energy of that space in whatever way it needed, right? And sure enough, completely unsolicited, having a cup of coffee in a coffee shop, having a conversation, noting that, oh, there were some pieces of art on the wall with, you see this a lot of times with a little price tag on it. So they're there, on commission or consignment. And I said, oh, I wonder if I could bring some paintings here. And that turned into the owners of the coffee shop offering me an artist residency for as long as I needed, to do whatever I wanted to. And then I realized, so that was my invitation, right? And so when I'm doing the paintings, just as I have that conversation that I was telling you I would have with my marketing clients or someone that's crossing over, I have with the frequency. So I have a conversation with the frequency of grace or the frequency to cross the veil. Like, and that's where I align then, so that I can open and do the paintings, because these are automatic in nature. I'm
Right.
just listening, and that's a crazy thing on its own. But and so I do that, and I need 10 days, and it's going to be a door, and that's I kind of have a gist of what it is going into it. And by the end of that 10 days, people contributed to the paintings. I was there for the opening of the season, and so the monks were there, and the monks blessed the paintings and me and everything that I do. That was incredible. But what the result was a painting that was literally, yes, it brought in fully realized divine earth. It anchored it in physically, and the door acts as like a magnet of lower energies that really can't exist in an area that's vibrating at a higher frequency. And so it's transmuting those energies. And so the door will remain at Lilydale. And the plan is to have it so that it's actually it's not a functioning door, but that it will face out of the coffee shop and to support the entire community. And again, going into that, I probably knew like 5%. I I just knew enough to open up, and then over those 10 days was this realization. So any one of my paintings, I I could talk on for an hour, just the how it came to be, what transpired, within that creation. I mentioned that a lot of the pieces have sound, and so some of the pieces have sacred sound that's been created specifically for them. Some of them have, this one and Lilydale, um, have the sense of smell. So sacred oils from Egypt that a dear friend of mine has the ability to receive. These are all about using the senses. So sight or sound or sight or smell. When I knew I was going to be bringing in love, I that was the first one that I heard. Well, bring in sound, and I thought, well, I'm not a musician. And what happened then, and what happens consistently, is within 24 hours, I meet the musician. And that particular painting, I just kind of told the musician what I was doing. And he said, oh, well, I've always had this dream of the artist sending me the paints. And so, again, these are automatic. So I don't know what paints I'm going to need. So I kind of asked, right? I got the paints, sent them to him, and he put them on a cymatics table for 6 weeks, hitting those with the frequency of love, the 528 hertz frequency. And then he listened to the meta insights, that communication that I receive, and then he intuited the music. So every way that these kind of complementary pieces come in are just as magical. So I could, yeah, I could go into any one of them, like great came in during the total
Yeah.
eclipse of the sun. It has its own story. So yeah, but that's the story in a nutshell for Lilydale.
So somewhere in your past, did you have any formal training in art, or is this all like automatic writing?
So it's both. I went to art school. I got a degree in art. I went immediately into marketing and advertising. So for decades, for over 40 years, I was an art director and a graphic designer, and then owned my own marketing firm. And so always in the arts, but I hadn't, it was decades. It wasn't like, oh, and then in the evening I would paint. I hadn't picked up a brush in years. So it was it's my method and my tool, which I believe we all have our, talents, right? And so how best can I serve with that talent? And like I said, I didn't like think, oh, in 2025, I want to do A, B, or C. This was none of that. This was, oh, I just, again, surrender, trust, and love. And in that process of being on the road, which I did for 3.5 years, was okay, now do this. Okay, now do this. And going, yes, I will. I will I will have a retreat with marketing clients and tap into higher states of consciousness and create a painting. Like, how crazy is that? But yet there were people willing to meet me there. And so that's really been the journey.
Okay, let's get personal for a minute, uh,
Oh dear.
because there are a couple of things. One is your own path in growing up and being raised by parents. Uh, how did your experience of the world either coincide with their experience or bump up against their experience? And were they accepting of your view of the world, or did they try to mold you into some other view?
Right, right. Well, that's a lovely question because both of my parents have passed, and so it's lovely to kind of think of that, right? My childhood. Um, First off, my parents were are just loving, um, just wonderful, wonderful parents. I would always say I had a very idyllic childhood. You know, nothing, no childhood's perfect, um, but it was very idyllic in many ways. They loved each other very, very much, and family came first, and extended family was a very, very rich experience. And we were very religious. I was raised Lutheran. We went to church every Sunday. My father and mother both taught Sunday school. They were they were very embedded in religion, as was I because of that, right? But I had a father that my relationship, we would hike every Sunday back to a waterfall, and that was our time together. My dad was a carpenter, and would come home exhausted physically, and but Sundays after church and after my mom made a big beautiful meal, we would go for a hike. And it was on those hikes that he would, I understand now as an adult, I was the only kind of person in his life that he could share this information with. He would talk about whatever books he's reading, or what he understands of, like he'd say, my nickname was Sis. He'd say, Sis, I'm reading this book. The guy's called Edgar Casey. And he would run these concepts by me. I was like 9, right? And so
Yeah.
there must have been like this knowing that not only could he have these conversations with me, because he knew I wasn't going to be able to contribute, but I wasn't going to judge him, right? I was like this, and I think he knew on some level that I was eating it up, right? It was like, oh, that what? Or talking about indigenous tribes, they have all these different belief systems, right? Their connection to the earth, and just so we would have these really deep, profound conversations. And so then when I kind of was very much on my journey, and he was getting older, I would go, to, like, I went to the Bosnian pyramids, and I'd have all these wonderful adventures and come back, and he would just be sitting there, tell me all about it, tell me all about it. And so I could openly say, oh my gosh, i I can assist this person dying. Like, he was really the only family member at the time that, I could converse with about it. So my mother we never really had that level of a conversation, because it started so young with my dad, and was really, really an integral part of my path.
Okay, now let's fast forward to your children.
Yeah.
And do you have a sense of, you talked a little bit about them trying to fit in with middle school and you trying to fit into the community and all of that. But uh, how accepting are your children of your beliefs and your activities?
You ask really good questions, Bob. I think that's always a moving target. Um, I'll be honest with you, in this conversation and in recent ones I've had on other podcasts, it's me stepping out more and more and actually voicing things that many of my family members would have never heard of. They're really some of my deeper awarenesses of myself. So I would say I have three grown children. I have 4 grandchildren. I would say they all land on some sort of a spectrum of mom's crazy to, oh my goodness, what am I witnessing? Right. And and so I have an inkling that if they watch this, then we might have a different conversation, right? Because I am revealing myself more. And it's interesting because I if you would have asked me 2 years ago, I would have said, you know what I want to do is I just want to paint these paintings and have them kind of get found or discovered, and they're here to serve. I don't really want to be a part of it. That's why I was like in the face of it. That's why I was in marketing, right? I could make any company or person look however they wanted to look and present themselves, but I always wanted to be in the background. And so it's been this realization that, well, I somebody needs to be the mouthpiece for this concept because it is an unusual one. I feel that it is a I feel like in 5 or 10 years, the fact that you could sit with the painting and receive support from a specific frequency from it will kind of be like, yeah, right. But
Of course, right.
it isn't right now, right? It isn't at all right now. Usually when I kind of give my elevator pitch of what these paintings are capable of doing, the eyes glaze over and go, and the person goes, huh? What? I can look at a
Yeah.
painting and receive support in some way. And in a way, I kind of look at that and go, well, that disconnect is kind of crazy to me because again, we all accept paintings. We all accept to some degree of contemplation or meditation or, focusing our energy. So to me, it's like, yeah, why not? Right? We have all sorts of tools. Why could it not be in? And so what happens with the paintings is you can see like there's a lot of circles, there's a lot of depth. There's there could be 20 layers. Like this painting has a lot more layers than this one. You can kind of tell that. This was done in 4 days. This was done in 4 months. But what happens is you pick a spot on the painting, one little spot, could be a little dot, and you just stare at that spot and relax your gaze. And what happens is, first off, if you kind of have a hard time meditating, it's very entertaining. Your brain is getting entertained by something to see, in many cases, something to hear, right? With the music, that the painting will move. It might go three-dimensional. The circles will start to spin. The colors could completely change or go away, and the painting could just be white. There's an there's animals. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, there's a bear in the corner. There's things will come through. Deceased loved ones can come through because they are portals into this higher state of consciousness, into this higher awareness, into this higher dimension. So them being that portal, and that's what's going to happen. So a lot of times if I don't kind of say that and the person sits with it and they go, whoa, what just happened? It started moving. It's like, oh, that's interacting with your pineal gland. Go with it, right? And so I get that that's crazy talk, but like I said, I think in not that long of a period of time, it's not going to be crazy.
So I'm interested in this concept of the higher self, in that it sounds to me like I could go on your website, set up an appointment with you, and have you tune into my higher self for me to give me information about what my purpose is in this lifetime, in this space, in this time. Is that
Yes.
true?
Yes, yes, it is. It's not going to be a conversation like we're having right now. It's actually three parts. Um, it's a conversation with you saying, "Hey, this is what's on my heart. This is why I'm coming to you. This is, what I'd like to be aware of." And then And then we get off that call, and it takes about a week or so where, just like the paintings, I don't put it on my calendar and say, well, today I'm going to tap into love. I'm open to you, to your higher self. And so when that communication comes in, I write it down word for word. And that might happen 3 or 4 or 5 times. So it could take like a week. And then I send that back to you. And it's usually about 12 to 14 pages typed. And I also send an audio because some people prefer to listen to things when they're, sleeping or meditating or walking, that type of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So how often does it happen? I mean, do you get calls all the time because people have heard about your abilities, or I guess
Well, yeah, it kind of all of the above, right? But so when I so I am kind of phasing out of the marketing, but when I owned a marketing firm, it was the first step in anything that I did because that's where I'm working from, right? I'm listening to a person, what they want, what their mission is, what results they want, but then I'm working from that higher space. So it was always a starting point with that. And so people will come to me either just for that, and that could kind of come in waves. I could get lots and lots of calls and then, kind of not for a couple weeks. And then it's also used if an individual wants a commissioned painting from me. It's always the first step with that. I also do retreats, individual retreats, where I have the Meta Insights, and then we actually are together for 3 days. And again, it's kind of what I started with the marketing clients, where we do these meditative type journeys together into that higher state of that person's fully realized divine self. And we're having this experience together. It can be very intense, very evolutionary. And then they're actually painting their own painting of their fully realized divine self. So they're leaving with a painting that then they can meditate with. So it's with that individual work as well.
yeah. So do you have a specific retreat center that you use for these retreats, or does it depend on where the person lives?
Yeah, it's everything from me flying to that person or group. It can, be a group of people, like a business. I've been blessed to do a couple that was preparing to get married, and they did a beautiful painting together, which was just so really beautiful. So it can be that. It can be a person coming to my home and be in my studio with a lot of my originals. And then with groups, I do a 1 day retreat. I actually have one I'll be doing in August at Lilydale, but I have a space in Etna in Pittsburgh that is my gallery, and there's also a kind of a learning center in there. Yeah. So it really depends.
Okay. Well, I'm not out of questions, but we're about out of time. And at the end of every episode, I ask the guests to leave the audience with some words of wisdom. And I know you have plenty, so I'm just going to turn the mic over to you and just say this is your last opportunity with this particular audience to leave them with some words. So the words are yours. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know that this podcast is around the spiritual journey, and if only to say again those words that I keep repeating, that trust and surrender to that trust, and do it in love, and just rely on those elements of each of our capacities to so that our higher self can guide us to what's next. And to me, that's only resulted in magic. Life being
Well,
magic.
magic seems to be a good word for it, because
Yeah,
just just what's on the screen behind your face right now looks pretty magical. Or as A Course in Miracles would say, it's not magic, it's a
that's
miracle.
that's right. And it's only something that is outside of our current understanding, right? Yeah. And Bob, I'd love to offer to your listenership a meditation. So I can send you a link to share, a YouTube video that is one of the paintings. The meditations are 11 minutes, and I'll send you a link for that. I think that'd be great for people so they can actually experience meditating with the artwork.
That's great, because I saw a reference to that in another interview that you did, and I
Yeah,
was I was looking for that link and I couldn't find it. So that'd
I'll
be
send
great if you'd send me that link. Okay. And I'll make sure I have it on my website so that people can link to it.
fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, well, audience, as always, take what resonates with you and incorporate it into your life, and put the rest on a shelf until you're ready to use it. And until next time, this has been your spiritual journey.